What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Landscape Accelerator Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Amy McNary from Bookkeepers for Landscapers. Amy, I'll let you introduce yourself, talk a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what services you offer, and we'll get into some questions afterwards.
Yeah, cool. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me here today to chat with your audience. I think anytime I have a platform to talk about bookkeeping, I get so excited. I know that bookkeeping is a pretty boring topic. But it's so important for your businesses. So it's a great topic to discuss and to talk about. So thank you for letting me share some with your audience. So I'm Amy McNary, and I'm the owner of Bookkeepers for Landscapers, and we're actually a virtual bookkeeping firm. So that means that we work remote from home. Me and my team, we're all remote. We're all across the US. And the benefit of that is that we're not limited to just working local in our area. We can also cast our net out and we can serve clients all over the US as well. So it's actually, I don't know, I think it's probably one of my favorite aspects of my business is that I get to know folks who are all over the US and support them and not just in a local capacity. So I kind of love that piece of what we do as well. Let's see, we are serving primarily the lawn care and landscape industry. We work with a lot of businesses that are, there's so many different areas within that industry and under that umbrella. We work with gardeners, we work with sod installers, we work with, just the general maintenance guys or, commercial versus residential. So we kind of see it all. There's always a little bit of difference in what we're doing and who we're supporting. But at the end of the day, bookkeeping is bookkeeping, and keeping the accounting records straight and accurate is what we're here to do. So some of the services that we offer, and I guess I'll say this, bookkeeping firms are all different in what they choose to do, who they choose to serve, what services they tend to offer. We try and keep it pretty narrowed in and pretty specific on the services that we offer. We do primarily try to just focus on the bookkeeping tasks, on the monthly bookkeeping cycle. We, of course, want to make sure that as we start, your books are clean and accurate. So a lot of times when we meet with someone, we will do what's called a diagnostic review. We'll review what your books look like and get a sense of, is there anything that needs to be corrected? Anything that we can tell right now is maybe not accurate. And so we'll clean it up and get it to a starting point to where we can take over and really keep it clean and accurate going forward. And from there, we do have some kind of little caveat services that we offer, like receipt maintenance, or receipt management, sorry, which is important. If you're supposed to keep your receipts. I know not everyone loves the idea of that. I know that's hard to do, but we work with really great software that allows us to make that really easy for business owners to do. We also do offer 1099 services. I don't know how you feel about 1099s. I can say I hate them, even though we offer the service. It's a very tedious process to discern who needs a 1099 and what's that process look like. So we do support our clients with that service as well. I think in general, though, bookkeeping firms can offer a variety of services to their clients. You can find bookkeepers who offer payroll services, or they might help support you with sales tax services, or AR and AP, like your invoicing and your billing. So there's a variety of services and offerings out there for what bookkeepers do. We try and keep it pretty specific in how we're supporting business owners. But we really love this industry. We love who we work with. I find that while I'm not a landscaper, nor have I ever been, I kind of relate to the industry because I think everyone who works in this industry is an incredibly hard worker. And I can just tell when I talk to them that they really care about what they're doing. And, as a business owner myself, at the end of the day, you got to get the job done, no matter how that looks, right? So if you're the one stepping in to help complete the project or whatever, like it takes a lot of dedication. And so I feel that in myself as well, that I can relate. I feel like the industry has a sense of kind of, they're very family oriented, which I am as well, which is one of the reasons why I created this business, to be virtual and work remote and be home with my children, make it very flexible for our lifestyle. And, I just love that. I think everyone in this industry, you have to be very passionate about what you're doing. And I'm very passionate about what I do. So I think there's some crossover, even though we offer different services, I think there's some crossover of how we can relate to each other. So we love what we do. What can I say?
Absolutely. That's awesome. So when it comes to landscaping in particular, I know you said the family aspect of it is a big factor for you, but what else made you kind of choose or narrow in specifically on working with, landscaping, lawn care, and all the other services that fall under that umbrella?
Yeah. So honestly, one of my very first clients that I started working with was a software business for landscapers. And so I really didn't know much about the industry until working with them. And then just over time, hearing from them about their customers that they support, kind of the pain points and the things that they deal with. It really gave me some education on the industry and the needs that the guys in the industry have, especially when it comes to the clerical roles of their business, because oftentimes these guys are out in the field all day. They're not at a desk, they're not sitting there emailing, so there are complications when it comes to running your office and working in the field. So kind of hearing that and thinking to myself, well, I could really, be helpful to this industry. So that was kind of my first little clue that maybe this was going to be a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And then I actually had an experience with a landscaping business. We unfortunately, in the spring of 2020, our home flooded. And it was pretty tragic. Like it was our basement flood. We have a fully finished basement. It flooded, 6 inches of standing water. It wasn't like a little pipe broke. It was like water was gushing from outside through the windows in the basement. I feel triggered just talking about it with you right now. Like it was traumatic. And so we discovered that we had some serious drainage issues in our backyard. We lived in our home for about a year. We had no idea this was going on. And so we knew right away we got to get this fixed. So we knew we needed to find a good landscaper to do some grading and drainage, new sod. It was a huge undertaking and a huge project. So we hired a business, a local business, and I mentioned it was the spring of 2020. So this was like disaster time for any business owner out there trying to navigate what that time meant for all of us, right? And so
Absolutely.
unfortunately, and then it was the spring too. So for this poor business owner, his projects just kept getting pushed back further and further. He had his subs either out because they were quarantining for COVID or they were actually sick. It was raining cats and dogs like every 3 days. And so his projects kept delaying. But through all of it, he was so great to work with. He was completely transparent. He was very honest. He knew the critical status of our situation in particular, because every time it rained, our home would flood more. And we finally got to a point where we're like, look, our basement's garbage at this point. Like you don't have to rush for us, right? Like it can't get any worse. But to him, it really meant a lot. Like, no, I have you slated for this project. We got to get it done. So one night I come upstairs and I see these lights in my backyard. And I'm thinking, what is going on out there? So I go peek out the window and I see the business owner running equipment. It's like 9 o'clock at night. He has his headlights on so he can see, and he's trying to get this job done. And it really struck me, like, as a business owner, I try to preach like work-life balance, but we all know that we don't, we don't honor our own work-life balance. I'm that person up late at night working. So I totally got it when I saw him doing that. But it also, it really hit me because I thought, this guy is not going home tonight, firing up the laptop and sending out invoices or reconciling his QuickBooks Online account, right? Like he does not have time for that. If he's in my backyard at 9 o'clock at night, like when does he have time for his family? And when does he have time for his life? And so I just saw that, and it really made me, again, kind of pull towards like, I think this industry would be a really good fit in an industry that we could really serve and allow our clients to feel the impact of our service, just alleviating that burden of like one less task on your plate. I knew that it was going to be very helpful to them. So that is one of the reasons that we chose to kind of pivot and move specifically into this industry and working with the lawn care and landscaping businesses. So we've really enjoyed it since then.
Absolutely. And me and you in that regard are in very, very similar boats where we offer a service that is absolutely essential for my end, growing and scaling a business, for you, maintaining and keeping everything foundationally, tight as far as the financials go, which is also obviously extremely important to maintaining, growing, and scaling your business. And at the end of the day, both of us are, offering services that if the business owner was to try and bring it on themselves, it's wearing a whole other hat. And not only do they not have the time, or experience to be doing that thing and also be good enough at it to where they can generate their desired outcome, but also it's like they have so many other things on their plate. And I'm sure that, from one business owner to another, whether it's marketing, bookkeeping, or landscaping, we all know that no matter what, no matter how many people you hire or outsource or what, moving parts within your business, you're wearing multiple hats all the time. So, both of us are able to, offer solutions where we can at least take one cap off of their head and say, hey, this is a very important piece of your business. We're professionals at just this one thing. Let us handle this so you can focus on all of the other things and maybe have some time for your family at the end of the day too, right?
Yes. All I
Super.
can say right now is preach it. Because, and you know what, just this week, I had just an email exchange with one of my clients who he is in the rhythm and routine of sitting down and taking his deposits. He, takes his mobile pictures of his deposits to deposit in the bank. And when he's doing that, he's trying to enter the payments into QuickBooks, and he's been getting really behind. And so we've just been entering the payments for him as we see them come through. And he doesn't know we're doing that. So when he's trying to catch up, he's like doubling up what we're doing. It's causing some problems for us. And so recently I went to him and I said, hey, let's figure this out because you're kind of causing some problems for me, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, stop doing it. Like, I had to swat his hand. Like, stop doing it. Like, that's why you hired us. Like, you can write the little note on your check so that when I see it, I know what to do. That's all you have to do. Stop trying to do this. Like, let go of it and delegate it to us. And he came back and he was like, thank you for like saying that to me. Like, thank you for making me step away because you're right. I don't need to take the time to do that. And so I know it can be really hard to let go. And it's really hard to, work with someone and trust that they're doing it. But I think once you do that and once you kind of get over it and then get yourself out of it, you'll never go back.
Absolutely.
You're like, okay, I don't have to worry about it anymore.
100%. I personally, like just this year, have made that huge jump where our business is big enough where I need to start bringing people on board to help with certain things. And literally, whether it was with my landscaping business or with the business I'm running now, I've always been that person that was like, if you want it done right, do it yourself, wear all the hats, not in a control freak way. I'm very good at letting people manage their tasks and I trust them completely to handle what they're supposed to do and, take care of their responsibilities. But for me, I always wanted to be involved in all of the moving pieces. And I think that's just something that for a lot of business owners, it's kind of ingrained in them because especially when you're first getting started, until you get your business to a level where you can, maybe financially support having other team members take care of certain tasks for you. Again, whether it be the marketing, bookkeeping, all of that. In the startup, grassroots, just launching the business, so much of that has to be done by the business owner. So you kind of become conditioned to feeling like you need to be doing all of these things for yourself. And like you said, relinquishing that control and delegating responsibilities. It's not that they don't trust you or don't want your help. It's just they're so accustomed to having to do it themselves. It almost feels weird when they can take a little bit of that stress off of their plate and be like, oh, Amy's handling it. We're good. We don't have to do all of the receipts or whatever, individual task it is that, they're delegating to you. So that's something that I have kind of gone through this year. And honestly, the biggest thing that has made a huge impact in the growth of my business is thinking about not how can I get this done, but who can get this done. And the truth is, whether you're a landscaper, a bookkeeper, or a marketer, there is someone out there that is better than you at that one individual task. And it's worth its weight in gold to go find that person that can handle that thing for you. So it's been a lot mentally for me to kind of let go of that control and oversight of trying to micromanage everything. But at the same time, the results that it's gotten and the people that I've been able to, work with and the talent that's out there to handle some of these problems. Once, like you said, once you kind of let go of that and dive into that world of, hiring people to manage certain things, I could never go back ever. It's so awesome when there's really talented people that know what they're doing and do an amazing job at their one role within the company and take all of that off of your plate. As a business owner, it is something that, I would pay unlimited money to not have those problems again. So it's super, super worth it. And it's just sometimes takes a little bit of time to let that mindset shift towards, okay, this person.
Well, it is a mindset shift. And you had mentioned that, like the scaling and growth. So a lot of times when guys are coming to us, they're finally at max capacity and they're at that point. They're like, I'm getting so busy and I'm growing so fast, but I'm being held back by, myself. Really, that's what like you're holding yourself back when you're trying to hold all those things. And it's very hard to, like you said, relinquish that. But that's where we see, like, when people are coming to us, they finally had that like aha moment. They're like, I just have to get rid of this. And I gotta make that step and take the dive in and find someone that can do it for me. And then I find, at least with us, with bookkeeping, that a lot of times guys are trying to do it themselves and they're probably not completely knowledgeable or they don't know all the ins and outs. A lot of times it's you just don't know what you don't know, right? And so then I think they realize once we've got them plugged into our system and they're seeing the results of having current numbers on a monthly basis, then it's like another like blown mind of like, oh, okay, so this is what it should be like. And so that's great. Like I love seeing kind of that progression of like, we take these messy books, we help you get out of the way, like we help pull that away from you, because then you also realize how much time you were kind of stuck in some of these tasks, and having that freed up time, now you can move on to those like CEO type tasks that you should really be doing and focusing on for more growth in your business. So it is really exciting to see when these guys can step back and get involved in other areas of the business that's benefiting them.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate and drive the point home, everything you just talked about within our coaching program with some of the consulting that I've done with, landscaping business owners, the very common theme is, if you as the business owner are the bottleneck, that is the biggest problem. And a lot of times what I'll share is, like I said, I'm going through this within my business too. So it's very easy to relate, even though the tasks and the roles and the people that we're bringing on board are different. The mindset or like the checklist as far as how to go about figuring out when you need these services is, this is a strategy that I use. Every business owner watching this, I implore you to try this and just take note of what is there. Write down every single task that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and then figure out which ones other people can do for you and do better. Because you are not the best bookkeeper if you're a landscaping business owner. You're not the best marketer. And there's a million other things within your business too, that those problems can be solved by very talented people. And when you free up that time and when you delegate those tasks, it unlocks the ability for you, like you said, to do the CEO tasks, the high leverage activities within your business that are the catapults for growth. Those are the things that as the business owner, you're at the, steering wheel of your business, which is, a vehicle for where you're trying to go with things. And there are very specific tasks within each individual business that are actually going to be responsible for moving that business forward. In the case of landscaping, a lot of times as the business owner, the biggest things that you should be managing are, project management, sales, and dealing with new customers. If you're not closing jobs, closing jobs is the thing that's generating more revenue for the business, and more revenue for the business allows you to solve all of these problems, right? If you're not consistently getting leads, closing those deals, you might not have the revenue to be able to hire new employees, buy new equipment, bring on a bookkeeper to solve some of your other issues on the back end of your business. So making sure that you're always focused on, okay, what are the most important drivers for growth within my business? And as the owner, those are the things that I can't outsource. Those are the things that you should be focused on doing, and making sure that all of the rest gets taken care of by other people that are qualified to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to tie into that, I think, really bookkeeping in the most basic sense, it really is like the very first step of one of the most important aspects of your business, and it's the finances. And so if you have books that aren't accurate, they're not updated, you have no sense of where your business is at. You have no idea. If you don't know the numbers in your business, that's a very scary place to be in. And so having someone who can, step one, put that all in place for you and generate a report that gives you the recap of what's going on in your business and where you're at and where you can improve or where you need to cut back. I mean, there's just so much information within financial statements. And so if you're struggling with that, I mean, I really encourage people that not only should you try to find a bookkeeper that you trust and that you want to work with, but I would encourage others to find someone who is available to help interpret what those financial statements actually mean for you. Because, as we just said, you might not have all the knowledge of doing the bookkeeping work. Well, you might not really know what's going on when you look at your financial statements or even having the time to do it. So having someone who will make the time to kind of analyze it for you and interpret what's going on there, I think can be so beneficial to then, like you said, okay, so what is our revenue and where do we need it to be? So what steps do I need to take to get it there? I mean, looking at that in itself drives so many different decisions in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only do you need to know the numbers and know that those numbers are accurate, but also you need a real interpretation of what that means and how that affects your business overall. A lot of decisions can be made based off of having those numbers and knowing that they're accurate. As far as projecting into the future of your business, landscaping is expensive. Equipment's expensive, labor's expensive, materials, depending on where you get them, can be expensive. There's a lot of overhead and there's a lot of, daily, weekly, monthly bills, especially if you're financing stuff too. It gets very complicated and you really, really need to make sure that you get that report at the end of the month and you know exactly how much money came in, how much was profit, how much went out and got paid. And all of those things are super, super essential. And if you have bad data, bad information, and bad numbers, you can make decisions that put your business in jeopardy. And you absolutely do not want to do that. So again, having the numbers is one thing, but having accurate numbers that are reliable that allow you to make good decisions is obviously way better and super important. So absolutely.
Yeah.
So quick question for you. I'm not super involved in your world, but what is the difference between a bookkeeper and like a CPA or accountant?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, that is something we get asked a lot. I will start this conversation by saying we don't offer tax services to our clients. So there really is kind of a dividing line. I think that CPAs can offer bookkeeping services. Traditionally, they don't. I mean, a CPA is usually focused on taxes. They're focused on tax filing. I mean, there's so many caveats for taxes, sales tax, and and a lot of times CPAs are doing both personal and business. So the volume of work that they're seeing is so great. That's why everyone's crazy during tax season, right? Like, there's just so
Absolutely.
much. And unfortunately, the tax code keeps growing and growing. The time frame to get taxes filed, I mean, you have until April 15th is traditionally what we consider tax day. That's from someone being in the industry, that's a very narrow time frame. And it's even earlier for depending on what type of entity status you are. If you're an S corp or a corporation, it's actually in March. And so it's very cumbersome for CPAs. So typically you don't have CPAs who are offering bookkeeping services because that's more granular, detailed, day to day. I mean, if you think about every single transaction that your business has, whether it's an expense for fuel or supplies and materials or paying your payroll or paying your subs, you maybe purchased a vehicle, you've got your revenue coming in from your customers, so the bookkeeper is taking every single one of those transactions and they're identifying what it is and they're classifying it to one of those accounts. Is this an expense? Is this revenue? Is this a liability? We owe this later. And so at the end of the month, really what a bookkeeper is doing is generating your financial statement so that the CPA at the end of the year has a combined full 12 months of an accurate financial statement that they can pull those numbers from to file the tax return. So I kind of use an analogy here to think about it is like a bookkeeper is like a chef and a CPA is like a food critic. So the chef has all the ingredients and the recipe card, and they're diligent to measure out precisely. And, that cook time is accurate. We don't want to have any errors. We don't want any burned dishes, right? So we're very meticulous in how we prepare the dish. And then at the end of the year, essentially, we're taking this dish to the food critic to then analyze. So it's not to say that you can't walk into a food critic's office carrying a bunch of ingredients and a recipe card and dump it on their desk. You could do that. But I'll tell you, if you do that, it's going to be very expensive for you because traditionally their hourly rates are much higher and they don't have the time to do that. So they're also going to charge you an extra fee for a rush order to get this work done during their busiest season. So it's not encouraged to walk in with a mess. And nowadays, typically what they're going to say to you immediately is you need to file an extension. We're not even going to take the time to do it because we can't. We just don't have the time to do that. So to me, and of course, to me, it's so important to have a bookkeeper to eliminate that. You're going to save money in that sense. You're going to save time for everybody. You're going to walk into your CPA's office and they're going to high five you because you're ready to go. You've got everything done. And the benefit in all of that is not only did you just make tax season so much easier for you and everyone else, but you have the benefit of every single month knowing what's going on in your business, seeing those numbers. And not only that, just having eyes on your books to catch things that are out of place or maybe we need to look into. Are you doing this? Do you need this expense? What's happening here? There's times where, this is not quite part of, our services, but we do it. We'll see that someone's about to overdraw on their bank account and I'll text someone. I'm like, hey, you need to make a transfer, like heads up, because you're so busy doing all of the things that even something as simple as that can be overlooked. So, the CPA is really not the person who is in the day-to-day and in the weeds. It's really what your bookkeeper is doing to make things a lot easier and smoother for your CPA.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything you just said, I can speak personally on experience with that. The first year running my landscaping company, we had the exact same issue that you just described, where we walked in to the accountant's office at the end of the year with one of those big like accordion folders full of our receipts and everything, every transaction we'd ever did. And we're just like, hey, we don't really know what we're doing, but here you go. And exactly like you said, it took them a long time to basically do a year's worth of bookkeeping work. And then we had to file for an extension because there was no way they're going to get it done in time with all the other clients that they had. And then additionally, it was far more expensive for us because of their hourly rate and all the other work that we gave them, which was fully our fault and could have been avoided. But, it just ended up, it was a learning experience, but like you said, it's one of those things where maybe you don't know what you don't know, and having those bookkeeping statements prepared and then bringing it to your accountant to file for you is going to be way cheaper and way less headaches, and just overall much better experience. And compare that to this year, or I guess the previous year, this tax season, so to speak, I made sure that my bookkeeping was on point. Everything was organized and ready to go. All I had to do was send our report to the CPA, and our taxes were filed and taken care of in less than 24 hours. Totally experience compared to the weeks and weeks of waiting, going back and forth, meetings, filing extensions. All of that was, it was kind of a mess, to be honest. And we got it done eventually, but it was time consuming and it was expensive. And especially at that time of the year where it's like spring is coming and maybe has already started, depending on where you are, your business is picking back up for, landscaping. And it's like, we don't have the time to be thinking and dealing with all this other stuff from last year. We want that done. We want it taken care of so we can move on and focus on the projects for this year. So that was definitely a learning experience. Threw us for a little bit of a curveball there, but like you said, definitely valuable to have that stuff prepared so you're ready to go into the next year with not having to worry about taxes and all the other stuff from filing. So
yeah. Well, and I think at the end of the day, so there is a difference between bookkeeping work and then the work that the CPA does. But I think at the end of the day, we're all on the same page. We are all on the same team. The business owner, the bookkeeper, the tax preparer, we all do have to work together to get to the results that we want. And so for us and what we do, we offer that, we can definitely be in contact with the CPA, answer any questions that they might have for us. A lot of times the CPA can gain access to the accounting software, so we don't even have to send anything to them. They can just jump right in there and see it. But for those who don't, then we can prepare the reports and send them to them. And there's a lot of times where I do, let the CPA know, hey, we probably need to talk about this because we've put a pin in this, and it's something that you'll need to probably take some more time to figure out the numbers, the depreciation, a sale of an asset, things that are that it's like you're going to have to talk to the business owner, but I'm here to help answer any questions that you might have. So at the end of the day, we're all kind of talking and making sure that we're getting things closed out. We want to close out the year and then never look at it again as far as doing the filings. But then we've got, the analysis, the trend analysis for year over year. We know that that's closed out and it's solid and that it's good. So unfortunately, you might be shocked. I'm not shocked anymore. I was in the beginning, but the number of business owners who come to me and tell me that they're behind on their tax filings, they'll typically it's 1 year behind. We filed an extension. We haven't filed for the last year yet. But sometimes it's like 2 and 3 years that they're behind. And I hate that for them because they probably don't even realize the penalties that they're incurring every single day as they delay that process. So I'm not trying to scare anyone. I don't want to do that, but I just want to make it known, again, you don't know what you don't know. You're probably not even thinking. You're like, I filed an extension. It's okay. And that is okay. But just know that there is a penalty that comes with that. There is a benefit to being on time and doing it right. And so finding a team that you trust who's going to help you get this job done and then just have it done and off your plate. And like you said, you're in the current year and things are busy and your hair's on fire because you're running all over the place. You don't want to be dealing with prior year stuff that you can't even remember. Because what we typically do on a month-to-month basis, I said we're in the weeds and it's granular. And there's times where we look at transactions and we could certainly guess, but we're not going to do that. So we do have questions for our clients every month. And a lot of times they're really easy questions. I'll give a really basic example for that. There's a lot of Amazon purchases. And I bet you I could buy an elephant on Amazon. Like you could purchase anything on Amazon these days, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as we see an Amazon purchase, it's immediately flagged. And we just, at the end of the month, ask our client, hey, what did you buy? And so it lets us know how we can categorize that asset. Were you buying office supplies? Were you buying supplies and material? Were you buying new work gloves? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
And so if the CPA, 15 months later has to ask you that question, are you going to remember? Or, now you've got to go back and dig and figure it out. So not only is there like money saving, but time saving. And those are two big important things that if you can just hit that from the beginning and not cause delay, this is me encouraging you to take in these words of wisdom right now.
Yeah.
Again, I said, bookkeeping seems so boring, but it's so important.
Absolutely. And just to double back really quick, you're talking about receiving fines and there's penalties for filing late. Like I said, our first year, there was a lot of chaos involved in our filings, and we thought we had filed for an extension. Our CPA had told us we had filed for an extension, but there was some miscommunications there as far as when it was done. So to start our season, there was one day we roll up to our mailbox where we usually get our checks and other business-related, mail and information, and we see an envelope and it says from the IRS, and we're like, oh boy. So we like, all right, we're not opening this one. We sit in the truck and we're like, all right, let's see what this is all about. Open it up. We got fined $2,000 for filing our taxes late. And
wow.
Not only is it scary when you show up to the mailbox and there's a letter from the IRS there, but when you open it up and you're starting your season, $2,000 in the hole, that was one of those like, shit, okay, we should have been figured this out. This is a real problem. You know what I mean? So that was not a very fun experience. And honestly, that's just, the consequences of not keeping a tight book. And it sucked, but, we learned the lesson from that.
I know.
Another thing that you had said before too was the monthly reporting and keeping track of things and getting some sort of statement where you know what's happening. With businesses, a lot of times, like the big purchases, the really big investments, whether it be equipment or, big materials or bigger jobs, as the business owner, when you're spending that much money on something, you have the mental note, you know exactly what's happening there. But a lot of times it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's the tiny little transactions that you're just hemorrhaging cash over month to month to month to month to month. And over time, at the end of the year, at the end of 2 years, all of that adds up and you're like, wait a minute, whoa, thousands of dollars for this or this piece. And it's the tiny, tiny little things that add up, the things that fly under the radar where unless you have someone else that can look at it and be like, hey, did you realize you're doing this? Or hey, all these Amazon, like we need to make sure that these get categorized correctly so that we can, file it a certain way to give you the best tax benefits. And all those tiny, tiny little details that seem obsolete, those are the exact ones that matter. And those are the ones where you need someone paying attention to that for you, because if not, over the long run, it will hurt your business for sure.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. I'm sure that IRS letter scared the pants off you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And
That's
it's funny. I will say this too. Sometimes you will get a letter from the IRS. And so I tell everyone, don't panic, because a lot of times you will get letters just notifying you of a change. It might just be something like you were on a quarterly basis, and because of the volume and the income that we're seeing in your business, we're going to move you to a monthly basis. And that's all it is. And so you would be shocked by the number of times that a client will text me a picture of an IRS letter and they see this big number and they're like, what's going on?
yeah.
And I'm like, hold on, it doesn't mean anything. So always take a deep breath. But yeah, that stinks. That's unfortunate when that happens. But
I
you know
was
what?
like,
We've been there with our clients before, and it's hard because you obviously want to see everyone succeed and you want to see them be successful. And I think when those things happen, it's like, okay, that happened. We got to figure out how to correct it. Can we do payment plans? Can we make installments? Like, how can we work to make this something where we can get through it and it's not going to tank the business? Like, what can we do in that sense? How can we be smart about it right now? And then how can we learn from this and then not do it again? Because you would think that would be the obvious, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's just you're so busy. And I get that you think, oh, I'm never going to get behind again. And then sure enough, here you are, not paying attention, you're behind. And so that it happens. So having someone to be like accountable with you to keep you on track, that's helpful for sure.
100%. So other than like the time and the financial savings of having your books prepared when it comes time to file your taxes, are there any other benefits of working with a bookkeeper for some of those services, or, come tax filing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think as far as that goes, we kind of hit on a lot of this, but we talked a little bit about receipt management and documentation, and I think that really is a benefit. So, we do offer the service of receipt management to our clients. Not everyone's doing it, and that's their discretion. As a business owner, you are responsible for those receipts. If ever you are audited, the IRS is going to want to see that information. So whether you are saving them in a shoebox somewhere or have them stored digitally, like that's great. But we can also help you with that. We use some softwares where it's so easy to just like snap a picture on your phone of a receipt. And then you really could just throw that receipt away if you wanted, if you have a digital copy. What we do is we take that and we actually push it into the accounting software. We use QuickBooks Online. We are certified pro advisors in QuickBooks Online. And so that's our preferred software that we use. So the software we work with, it actually takes that receipt image and it will actually attach it to that specific transaction in your books so that if ever maybe you're audited, hopefully not. I have yet to go through an audit with someone, so like knock on wood. But even your CPA or your tax preparer, as they're filing and something maybe sticks out and looks a little odd to them, they could simply open that transaction and see the proof of the receipt for the purchase. And then, decipher if, it is a legitimate business expense or whatever they need to do, but at least the validation is there and the proof is there that you have that. So I think that is one benefit when it comes to tax filing is we can capture your bank statements for you, loan statements. We attach those to transactions, assets. Anytime a client is purchasing an asset, we need the purchase agreement. We want any financing records so that your loans, we want all of that so we can attach it right there to the transaction so that maybe it is 3 or 4 years from now and we're looking back at it. We have all of that information right there in one spot, saved right to that transaction. So I think that can be really helpful. And then additionally, just making sure that you're maximizing your deductions. So there's certain things that, again, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So like one tiny little thing that I think can easily get overlooked is if you are financing something and you have monthly loan payments, what we do is we take a look at your loan statement and we want to see, well, how much interest are you paying on this loan? Because that expense can be a deduction. And so we want to make sure we separate, the principal payment from the interest. We want to separate that. And that helps keep the balance of the loan accurate on your books. And it helps you to also have that tax deduction separated out so the CPA can see that right away. So there's just little things like that, that if you're maybe handling it yourself, you may be missing out on some of those little things. And of course, bookkeeping services is tax deductible as well. So that's right there, shouldn't be a limitation for you to hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah. So is marketing, coaching, and consulting too, in case you didn't know. Education. So 100%. Are there any other things that business owners, specifically landscaping business owners, probably could be writing off that might not seem like something that's obvious?
I think one thing that's like maybe not super obvious for the industry is like office expenses, because we don't really think about, and that depends. It depends on how big you are and what your setup looks like. If you have a facility that you either own or you're renting, it's going to be pretty obvious. But if you're still working from your home, then yeah, there are certain things like if you're purchasing office supplies, or we typically don't do this in the day-to-day, but I know that when you're doing your tax filing, just like the square footage of the area in your home that you designated as your home office, that can be a tax deduction and written off. So I think that that's probably not super obvious. But if you are, purchasing some type of like office equipment, you need a new printer, write that off. Let us know. Let's make sure that you purchase that through your business account. And I think honestly, there's just having the communication with your bookkeeper. If you're not sure, just ask, because that's one thing that I will say is kind of a no-no that we see, is that if there is a grade line between business transactions and personal transactions. If you're using your business cards to make personal transactions, that's a huge red flag, because they call it piercing the corporate veil. And so what that's doing is it's really causing this blurry line of like, do you own a business, or is this just a hobby that you have? Because I see a lot of personal and some business, it's not separated and distinct. And so if ever, let's say you were facing a lawsuit, somebody is suing you, your personal assets can be at jeopardy, because it doesn't seem as though you have this distinct business, is that you have this kind of grade, what's this hobby that maybe you're running. And so obviously you have a business, but lawyers are lawyers, right? So we try to really harp on our clients like, hey, knock it off with these personal transactions. It's not to say that you can't make a mistake. I've done it before in my own business. I'll be at the gas station and I have left my purse behind and I have my business card with me and I have to purchase gas, right? So there's ways that if you alert us and let us know, hey, this was an accident, we can make sure that it's recorded in your books to not show as a business expense. But I have worked with clients before who really fill their business accounts with personal expenses. And I will say with that, as well as it kind of being a red flag, it's also going to take me more time to weed through and sort out. I'm going to be questioning things a lot more that might just be an obvious business expense. A great example of that is a gas station. Okay, so are you buying fuel for your business, or is this personal? What is that? So now I've got to ask you every single time that I see that transaction coming through. So it's taking me more time. It's taking you more time. Price is going up on our services, right? So those are just some little, I guess, tips to be diligent and separate out, what's a personal expense and what's a business expense. I don't know. I think I got off topic there with what is beneficial for tax filing, but that I can give that advice to someone who's listening today.
Absolutely. So within that, though, is there a world where, let's say that there are some personal transactions that are being done with a business credit, debit card, bank account, whatever, can that be done through the business account but not be filed as a deduction? So it's like, hey, we made these purchases with business's money. We're not trying to claim them as a tax deduction, just so that's clear. And then, you can still kind of just separate the two of them? Is there
Yeah.
an easy way, or is that like a valid approach, or is that something where it's just like don't muddle the waters and keep it very cut and dry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, the hope is that we keep it pretty cut and dry. But it happens. I've done it in my own business. It happens, and it's just a mistake. And typically, when I see it happening, the business owner will come to me first, and they're like, "Heads up, I messed up, and we need to fix that." And so the easiest way that we can handle that is just treat it as though you were paying yourself that dollar amount. So essentially that's what you're doing, right? You pay yourself, let's say the $50 that you spent on XYZ, and then you would go purchase it from your personal account, right? So that's how we would handle it. We would just show that it was a payment to yourself for that dollar amount. So there's an easy fix for it, but the importance is that it's not a consistent practice, because once it is showing up too much, then that's where the question is, well, what are we doing here? Is this a business? Because it doesn't appear to be. If you're paying for your Netflix subscription and you're taking the family to dinner, and there's a lot of expenses that have nothing to do with running a lawn care business, this is pretty questionable. We can move those off the books and not show as a deduction, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, if you are, and that's okay. As far as like filing your taxes go, that's okay. We can make it separated and show it that way. But it's more of a scenario where if you were ever to be in a situation where a lawyer is involved, your personal assets are up for grabs in that case, because they're not protected under whatever entity status you've set up if you're causing this confusion in the business. So that's why it's important. And I think most people, especially those who are trying to operate a serious business, I think they do try their best to do that. But sometimes it takes some education and knowledge, and maybe a little stern finger wagging from me to let them know, like, we want to see that going away. And then, of course, like I said, it's probably costing them more to do it that way on our end.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know there's plenty of guys that are in the boat where, and again, speaking from experience, I'm more than guilty of doing the same thing, where it's like, especially in the startup phase of your business where you're not paying yourself, maybe taking a company lunch or putting some gas in the personal vehicle is kind of how you pay yourself. And so, obviously you want to separate that at some point or another once the business is far enough along where you don't have to, and you can afford to put yourself on a payroll or distribution or whatever, where you can, get those funds into a personal account and handle the personal stuff over here. But, it's definitely something that, again, in the startup phase, that'll slip through cracks here and there. But
The
just,
startup phase is so hard
yeah,
because, you'd mentioned before, things are expensive, right? And so as you're starting out and you're maybe not quite to that area where you can't afford all these people to be helping you with things. So I think having resources like what you offer, what I offer, just to learn, like, what are best practices? How can I, even though maybe I'm in a position where I'm still wearing all of the hats and I have to for a little bit longer, how can I best set myself up for success so that I don't get to a point where I'm ready to hire out or I can't afford XYZ, but I've created such a mess that now I really feel the pain with the expense and having someone correct or rebuild or whatever for me. So hopefully your audience is really taking advantage of what you're offering to them, and they're listening and they're taking these tips and they're putting them into practice, because it really can save them so much down the road.
absolutely. And that's really what one of our main missions is to provide an education platform that is industry specific. Now, obviously, bookkeeping and all the stuff we're talking about can be applied to any industry, but myself included, and a lot of people that I know that have worked in the landscaping industry and gone on to start their own landscaping outfits didn't come from a background of business education. A lot of it was, hey, I've been doing this since I was 17, 18 years old, have no clue what I'm doing as far as running the business goes, but I'm really, really good at these services and I want to do it for myself. And so they go out and they start their business and they get things rolling. And then all of a sudden they realize there's all these other problems, headaches, and things that need to get taken care of on the back end as the business side of things. And it's like, again, you don't know what you don't know. And education is the single difference between you doing things the right way, and, putting yourself in positions where, things within the business aren't running as smoothly as they should. So just, you don't know what you don't know. And to be able to provide, videos, podcasts, stuff like this, where we can hopefully, educate some people and at least make people aware. That's the biggest thing. It's just awareness. And if you at least have seen someone talk about it and it's something that you should think about, then, obviously you're armed with some information so you can go and make decisions for your business accordingly.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think this is a good segue that I kind of have a few tips or things, little mistakes that I see business owners in this industry making that I would be happy to kind of share and create that education so that maybe you're nowhere near being ready to do some of these things. But I mean, I think that's how you learn is you learn from others' mistakes. And then you say, well, I'm not going to do that because now I know better. So I think one of the areas that I see in the industry where they get into trouble is cash flow. That's a big, that's a hard thing. I think for a lot of industries, that's really hard, but especially this industry where it can be cyclical based on your location and where you're at, or, just the services. I know a lot of guys kind of have like a dual business where they're offering a seasonal service to supplement when long hair is not in season. So making sure that you're really keeping an eye on your cash flow, setting aside funds so that those months where revenue is not as high, you're still able to carry through with the expenses that you're going to face year round. Maybe your cost of goods sold expenses are reduced in those slower months, but you still have overhead expenses that you're going to be paying through the year. So being mindful of that and making a game plan. I think another thing is budgeting. Having a budget for your business that you're looking at. And we don't officially offer budgeting services, but I have had a few clients come to me and ask, hey, I know I need to make a budget, and do you mind looking over it with me and helping me, or what do you think I need to be changing or doing in this? And I'm happy to do that because I love budgets and I love, looking at what did we budget and what did we actually do? Are we short? Are we over? Are we short? What do we need to tighten up for next month if we've gone way over, and why did we go way over? I think just being mindful of like, not just the right now or what we do last month, but kind of looking ahead at like, okay, well, we know these factors are going to be in play later in the year. So do we even have the funds available to make sure that they're going to happen? Are we hiring? Do we have the fund? Like, can we sustain that over time to make sure that we're able to pay our subs or our employees? So being mindful and having a budget, I think, is an area that everyone should really try to set in place. I also, kind of more specific, one thing that I see happening a lot, but I think is just not understanding how it works. And I will say we do not offer payroll services to our clients, but we almost act as a liaison between the business owner and their payroll provider. So if there ever is an issue with payroll taxes, there's a tax adjustment, something happens, I know that my client has zero time to deal with this, right? They barely had time to process payroll anyway. So now there's a hiccup. So we often will tell them, hey, I'll contact the payroll provider. A lot of times we actually have like our own representative with a payroll processor that we can get into quicker than maybe you can when you call the 1-800 number. So I encourage you, if you ever have a software problem or a payroll problem, go to your bookkeeper and see if they have a fast, behind the scenes connection with someone to help mitigate the hold time on the phone. But we oftentimes will see these payroll tax things pop up. And one thing that I see specifically related to payroll is bonuses. So you've got a guy who went above and beyond, he's really killing it, he's a rock star on the team, and you want to reward him for that. So you throw him some cash or you write him a check. And that's great. We want you to do that, but we want you to do it the right way. And so when you pay someone cash or you're paying them, even in a gift card form, if it's a monetary amount that you're giving, it has to be processed through payroll for the withholding tax, for not only the employer tax, but also for your employee's tax portion as well. So if we see that you've done that, and this happens all the time at the end of the year, we start seeing these big checks coming through, and I'm like, hold on, what's that for? And they'll be like, oh, they just had a great year. I really want to reward them and let them know how much I appreciate them. And I'm like, well, I have bad news for you, because now we need to go back to the payroll processor and we've got to have them run an off-cycle payroll to account for the taxes that need to be withheld from that amount that you've paid to your employee. So I know that's really specific, but I almost want to start crying every time I see like this random check come through, and I know immediately what all the work on the back end entails. And what gets really dicey is when you're like right up against the quarter changing over, because if we don't catch it until the next quarter and we question it then you have to go back and amend last quarter's taxes. And that's a fun process to deal with. So just even in that, if you are going to give bonuses, if you are using a payroll provider, run the bonus through payroll and take care of it that way. And then lastly, another thing that I see is pretty common that I can't blame any business owner for this, because again, you're just busy and there's so many things to do, but collecting W-9s for any contractor that's working in your business, I think is a huge thing to be mindful for, because at the beginning of the year, you are required to issue out 1099s to any business that is contracted for your business in which you've paid them $600 or more. And it's a whole process. I think I mentioned earlier that I really hate 1099s. And the reason for that is because they've become incredibly complicated now that we're using payment processors. And the IRS continues to try and change the definition of when that should be issued. And then funny enough, they kind of recant and they say, well, we're going to push that off one more year. So we've seen that the last couple of years, they're like not ready to make these changes. So the education and the knowledge of, what goes into issuing the 1099, it's always, the goalpost is always kind of moving. But one thing that the business owner can do upfront to make the process smoother is, before you pay out your sub, ensure that you have a W-9 on hand and on file, because that is required in order to issue the 1099. All the information on the W-9, which is very minimal. It's like the contractor's name or business name, their either EIN or their social security number, and their address. That's really what's on this form, and that's what you need. And unfortunately, you can't just take that information. You do need a W-9 form. And one of the reasons you need this form is because we're verifying the entity status. If the contractor is an S Corp or they're incorporated, they do not need a 1099. And a lot of times I face this. We will help our clients in some cases collect W-9s, and we'll get a lot of pushback from contractors who say, well, I don't need one. And we'll say, well, we still need the W-9 to verify why you don't need one. So we offer to our clients, we use a software that kind of flags when we see that a subcontractor is hitting that $600 threshold or is over, then it will kind of notify us that this person's going to need a 1099. So we'll ask our clients, hey, do you have the W-9 on hand? And if they don't, well, it's kind of a nudge, like, well, you need to go collect one. Or if you want us to collect it for you, we can do that in a secure way where, if you provide us with the email address, then we can contact that subcontractor for you. And the software that we use allows them to either upload their own W-9 or they can fill out a templated W-9 form. It comes back into our software, and then we can actually push that into QuickBooks Online. So you've got it right there in the accounting software, ready to go. So that is something that in this industry, you are hiring a lot of subs. And sometimes you're hiring bigger companies where this is just not a big deal. But oftentimes you're hiring guys who are just like solo contractors. And oftentimes that's where we see the most pushback, probably because there's just not enough education. They're like, why? I don't need to fill out this form. We're like, yes, you do. Please fill it out. So just having that like upfront conversation with them. And a lot of times the way to get around it is to let them know, I need a W-9 before I can pay you. And then they're pretty quick to fill out the information for you.
Right. There you go. So the W-9 form, that's generic, right? Like they could go and download this from the government website, or I'm sure like the town clerk's office or somewhere locally, they could pick up a copy of it.
Google W-9 form and it's there. Yeah, it's a really basic form. And oftentimes you can download like a templated form or you can already fill it in. You can print it out, write on it, scan it back in. Yeah, it's easy to access and find.
Awesome. And just really quick on that note, like you said, the one of the biggest things related to the W-9 and the 1099 was verifying the status and like legal entity associated with a specific subcontractor. Is there any difference in how it affects bookkeeping, whether you have an LLC or an S corp or another corporate structure? And if so, how does all of that kind of work?
Yeah, there are some differences. For the most part, again, bookkeeping is bookkeeping, but there are a few little caveats. And one specifically is once you've moved to that S corp status, typically, and this is something when someone comes to me and they say, should I change my entity? Like, when should I be doing that? I usually tell them it's time to talk to a CPA, because they're going to be the one to really walk through this process and let you know if you're someone who should be doing that, because there are tax advantages. So the idea behind this is that as you turn into an S corp or you're incorporated, you're now on payroll. And so instead of paying self-employed taxes, your estimated quarterly taxes, you're now paying payroll taxes. And so there can be an advantage and a benefit to doing that, that helps you save on that tax burden. But they say that you must be earning a reasonable salary for the industry that you're in. So if you're not quite to that point that, if you're the CEO of your business, and not to say that you have to be earning 100,000 or more, but they really just look at the industry and say, okay, you're probably a little lower than where we would typically see someone who's not the business owner in this similar role. So if you're not quite at that point yet, hopefully the CPA is saying not yet, you're going to be in a better position tax-wise if you wait and hold off to be an LLC. So really that's kind of the difference. There is also a little bit of difference in the equity and how that's listed out on your balance sheet. Because if you are a partnership, you want to make sure that you're not dumping all of your equity into one account. You really do want to split it out based on, what is the partnership share in the business? Are you 50-50? Or are you, 40-60? Like, what does that look like? So sometimes that can be affected with S corps as well as the distribution accounts and how we have that set up. But overall, primarily, there's not a lot of difference in the day-to-day bookkeeping and what that means for your business.
Awesome.
So a lot of that, again, because we do get tax questions. And I try to CYA as much as I can. And I'm like, I'm not a tax professional. Go talk to your CPA, but I can give you a little guidance and a little ammunition for when you go and talk to them. What are some of the questions that you should be asking them, or what are some things that you should be thinking of? So yeah, good question.
Right on. So another kind of loaded question, I guess, and maybe this is one that would be better for a CPA too, but any information or knowledge, or if you want to plead the fifth on this one, you absolutely can too. But when it comes to being audited, right, is there any triggers, any specific things that are going to make you more or less likely to get audited? And if so, how can those things be avoided? But really, like, what are the big red flags? What are the big no-nos of, like, if you do this consistently over time, you are almost guaranteed to have to encounter one at some point?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question. I currently don't have any clients who have been audited, thank goodness. So I haven't been through that process myself to know firsthand what to tell you. I would say one area that I know for sure that could cause concern is being late on your tax filings. So a really great scenario that I actually ran into recently was I was working with a business in a state in which I was under the impression that they did need to be paying sales tax. So they needed to collect sales tax from their customers and then remit it to the state. But based on the service they were offering, it turned out they did not need to be. But when I first looked at their books, I was like, it doesn't look like you're collecting sales tax. And so we both panicked. We were like, oh my gosh, what? That would be really bad if you've been in business all these years and you just didn't know. And they really were unsure because the state they're in, for the most part, landscaping services does fall under the category, and they're a caveat business to the landscape industry. So they're kind of getting away with it. But we had to call the comptroller of that state, and I asked all the questions, what happens if all these years they haven't been? And so I thought this was so interesting. They told me, they were like, we would know. Oh my gosh, you guys are watching everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think they really do kind of keep tabs on when you're filling out your business license and you're doing this and that. They are, keeping track on who's filing and who's doing what and what that looks like. But I would say also, it could be as far as like CPA has seen a lot of red flags in your books. I bet they're not alerting anyone to needing an audit done. But I will say this. This goes back to what I said earlier about not having a lot of personal in your business, because if you do and you are audited, yeah, you're going to face a lot of penalties if you have really extravagant or wild or completely unrelated to your business expenses that are found out. Because it appears as though you're trying to hide, you're trying to pay less in taxes by taking these tax deductions that you really shouldn't be. So I am going to kind of plead the fifth on this just because I don't have direct experience with an audit. But I would say that as long as you're being timely and as long as you're trying to do the right thing in your business, then you're going to be fine. Even if your business does get audited, if you're doing the right things and you're on time, you're going to be fine. If you're keeping track of your receipts, if you're keeping record of things, it's going to be easy. And that does happen. It does happen where you're just look at the draw, they're going to come check on things, then you can have an easy audit, smooth sailing, but that's
If such a
typically
thing
not what's
exists.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured I'd just ask because obviously as a business owner, it's kind of important. I try to stay up to date or at least in the know as much as I can. And I've seen a bunch of articles, whether there's any validity to them or not, I have no clue. Again, I'm not a CPA either. Take all of what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but obviously within certain income ranges for businesses, there's more or less likely of a chance of being audited. And then also just like you said, filing on time and, mixing in transactions that are not related to the business, all things that are potential red flags. So definitely important to just keep it above board and do things the right way if you want to avoid all of that trouble, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're here to help with. We're not the police. You're the business owner. We often take direction from the client. We'll ask them, hey, what is this? What are we doing with it? I can come back and say, well, typically I wouldn't do that. Or here's what we usually see. But at the end of the day, if that's what you would like, then that's okay. The financial statements that we issue out to our clients, we will tell them, these are not audited statements. That's really up to the CPA then to, once they're doing the tax filing, they are signing off on it. And so we do go with the discretion of the business owner, but a lot of times the business owner will kind of heed our advice and want to go in the direction of the general consensus. So we often don't see things getting too out of whack, but there are cases where we do. And I'll give you a really good example. So typically, when a business owner pays themselves, it's considered a draw, and that dollar or that total lives on your balance sheet. And I had a business a couple of years ago where on first glance at their books, I see their owner payments listed on the P&L. And I was like, well, this isn't right. And so I let them know, like, hey, whoever was in your books before, like, this is not what we typically see. We usually see that this is an equity account and you have it as an expense account. And they were like, yes, we have asked to see it that way because we want to see what we pay ourselves subtracted out of our total revenue. And I was like, well, I understand that, but it is not how we do it. And the reason why is that as I was running through their monthly reports with them, I would always make a note to tell them that if you're running numbers or you're running ratios, your numbers are wildly off. Like your profit margin is not going to be accurate because you're inflating it, or it's not meeting the requirements of how we would normally issue this ratio and how we would set up this equation. So keep that in mind that you're requesting this for one reason, but it is throwing off some KPI metrics in the other side. So we had to do like an additional equation for them and give them like, here's your true number. And I even verified with the CPA, like, hey, we really need to tell them to clean this up. And they were like, it's okay. At the end of the year, I'm going to move all the numbers. So at the end of the year, everything got filed correctly. It just It wasn't right, but you know what? That was their request. I understand why they wanted to see that way. And so we did it for them. So sometimes that happens and you can give all the advice that you want. And at the end of the day, we're going to follow what our client is wanting to see.
Right. So in that regard, obviously there's some flexibility on your end where, you can lay out, hey, this is how we would structure everything. If it was our business, this is how we would do it. But then you're also able to account for some client requests. And if they already kind of have something, you guys can, you know, meet in the
Yeah.
middle somewhere, or at least, accept some of their custom requests or things that they want to do for their business.
Yeah, we can do that. And a lot of times we want to use, we call it a chart of accounts. And this is kind of the lineup of all of the accounts that you'll see in your accounting software between your revenue accounts, your cost of goods sold accounts, your expense accounts. And so there are certain accounts that we want to see every time in this industry. But that doesn't mean that we can't add more. Or, if your business just doesn't, like, let's say you just don't hire out subs and you only have employees, then we're not going to see that account. So there is flexibility in that too. We know in general, this is what we want to see. And if we aren't seeing it, we're going to ask you what's going on with that or why it's not there. I've actually been really surprised lately because there's been 3 times this year that I've reviewed the books from a potential business owner chatting with us about our services. And they actually did not have any cost of goods sold accounts in their profit and loss statement. And that to me is a red flag because those numbers separating out those expenses as being direct costs related to any of the projects that you're doing or working on. Things like supplies and materials directly related to a project, or subcontractors hired directly to complete a project, or equipment rental, things like that. We want to see that up there in cost of goods sold so that you can figure out your profit margin. And if you don't have that, then we really don't have good information for your business. And so it just took some prodding to ask, like, what's going on here? And they were like, oh, I don't know. And it was being managed by another bookkeeping firm. And so again, like working with someone who is industry specific can be really beneficial to say like, no, we really need to see this, even though sure, those are expenses and they could just be classified as overhead expenses, but to your benefit, it's better to not do it that way.
Right. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. When you're in the process of onboarding a new client, can you just kind of walk me through what that looks like, what steps need to take place as far as access to some of their financial stuff? Like, how do you guys get everything set up so that you can start delivering on your services?
Yeah, so thank goodness for technology because we really make it so smooth and so easy. Obviously I'm remote, so nobody's like coming to my office. We're not working physically with paper, anything like that. So it's all about technology. And I think thankfully, like probably the only good thing that came out of COVID was making this remote transition more acceptable to people. And they've really kind of learned and gotten on board with, you do have to rely on technology for these things. And it's made it really easy for us and for our clients. So what we generally do if a business comes to us, we do review their books and take a look at, is everything in good shape or do we need to make some corrections for you? We'll kind of present that to them and let them know, here's the changes that we think need to be made, and the amount of time and effort and just everything that goes into it to present a package to them. And once they've accepted that, what we do is we use a software. It's called Keeper, probably irrelevant for you guys to know, but we use a software that allows us to have a client portal. And we really use that for communicating about the books, whether they're transaction level questions or even non-transaction questions. So we try to make this so easy for everyone. We use the software to set up a checklist of all of the items that you will need to provide to us in order to clean up the books or get started. So a lot of times the basics, and it's going to depend on every business because every business is different, but the basics are really the prior year. I say prior year, the last year that taxes were filed, we want to see your tax return because we want to make sure that whatever the ending numbers for that year is lining up to beginning numbers for the next year. And if we're seeing that they're not matching, we've got to make some corrections. So we want to see prior year tax return. We are also going to ask for access to your bank account, your credit card accounts, if possible, loan accounts. And when I say access, I don't mean direct access. We're asking for read-only or third-party access. And this is mostly for your benefit. And the reason for that is that we are oftentimes pulling up the bank accounts to verify information that we might just be seeing a blip of a description in the accounting software. Like QuickBooks might only have a portion of the bank memo line, and I really don't know what this transaction is. So we can easily log into our own credentialed banking portal through your bank to see your account, and we can see the full memo line of that transaction. We can also pull bank statements on our own. And that's such a benefit to you guys because then we don't have to hound you for those every month. Hey, I'm waiting on you. Could you please go and take the time to pull this? And it's such an easy thing, right? But it's like the last thing you're thinking about is pulling a bank statement, but we need it in order to move forward with our work. So we're going to be asking you for read-only access where we can get those. If you can't, and I understand some banks are pretty old school and they don't offer that. So bank statements, and we're going to give you a list of everything that we need for that. Sometimes if you are dealing with sales tax, we're going to ask for the login for your state sales tax. So things like that we need access to. It might be specific documents. We might see that you've told me that you have assets, but there's no assets listed on your books. So we are going to ask for purchasing agreements or any financing documents to help put that on there and get it, to being accurate to the current year. So we send that all to you. You receive an email with a link that goes direct to your client portal, and it's kind of like a checklist. You can just check it off as you go. We have an intro video to kind of introduce you to the software. It's so easy and user-friendly, but it's kind of nice. Anytime you're working with a new software interface, it's always like, okay, what am I doing? What are they wanting me to work with? So we try and make it really easy and give them a glimpse of a quick training on here's how it works and what you're going to see. Once they get everything to us, it's on the checklist, then we can get started on whatever it is that we're doing. If we're cleaning up books or they're good to go and we're just starting monthly bookkeeping, or if we're helping them start from scratch, they've never had an accounting software before and we're building it for them. Once we have everything, then we can get going. And I will admit that this industry is notorious for being a little slow when it comes to the request of documents and then providing them to us. And I understand why. I totally understand why. But it is to your benefit. And I try to encourage guys like, hey, if you get hung up anywhere, let me know. Let me see how I can help you or what I can do. There are times where I'm limited, even in just the routine clients that we work with, where we'll have something going on with the bank and I'll try and call and see if we can get something moved along. And they're like, you're not a signer on the account. So sometimes there's not a lot that we can do, but sometimes there's little tips and tricks that we know to help them get past a step they might be hung up on, especially if they're not terribly tech savvy. That's something we can work through though. And I believe that even those who are, old school, they're working on paper, technology is so good for you. And I've watched a lot of business owners go from paper to software, and it's like game changer for them. So sometimes it's just introducing them to some softwares and then letting them see the benefit to the automations, the way we work together. I mean, we really do have a process. Once we get started working, I kind of have mentioned that we're always going to have a question for our clients. It's that silly Amazon transaction, or there's a check that I can't read. Sorry, sometimes there's chicken scratch and I just can't read it. So instead of guessing, I'm going to ask you, hey, who did you write this check to? I just can't make it out. And so at the end of the month, I'm using that same client portal system to ask those questions so that, again, it's very familiar. You know where to go and how to access that information. You can just the best thing that I love about the software is I can either email you or I can text you. So maybe you've got 10 minutes between things and you saw that, you got a couple little texts from me with questions. You can just quickly reply back and then you're done. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Awesome.
And then our hope and our goal is between the 10th and the 15th of the month that we have your financial statements delivered to you. We actually, we do two things. It's maybe a little redundant, but I really like the second thing that we do. So we pull just static reports from QuickBooks and we put a nice pretty cover page on them, but we deliver those to our clients And they're kind of just boring financial statements, right? Black and white. We also work with a software called Digits that makes the statements interactive. And I really love it because you can hover over an account total and it's going to pop out a 12-month like bar chart to show you the trend of the last 12 months. So even though you're looking at this month's financial statement, you can also say, is that number seems a little high. And just by hovering over it, you can compare it back to the last 12 months. It also has a lot of AI features in it. So it's generating quick stats about what it's seen between, whatever setting we put it on. Typically, we compare to the prior month, or we'll get to the end of the quarter and we'll compare. And so it's really nice to see like, oh, we had a 48% bump in revenue this month, like just to get those quick stats. So there's a lot of interactive charts and things that make this reporting cool. So we do send that to all of our clients as well. There's like a KPI metric dashboard where they can easily see, what was my income, what were my COGS this month, what was my net income, who were my top customers, and who were my top vendors that I'm paying. So to kind of at a glance see all of that, I think that is really beneficial as well. So that kind of takes you from like the start all the way through like end of month, kind of what it looks like for us. We try and make it really easy because we know you guys are so busy. So the less that you have to do just makes it so much easier on the back end.
That's awesome. I really like the second piece you're talking about, where there's kind of like a dynamic or interactive thing where you can start seeing numbers and projecting a little bit and keep track of things and know month to month kind of how things are going and where the business is moving. That's really awesome, and powerful tool for the guys that maybe have no clue or how to track any of that stuff themselves. So that's big. As far as starting to work with you guys, I know there's probably people like something that I would think is like, maybe this isn't something that we can do in the middle of the month or in the middle of the season, or maybe we should just wait till next year to, finalize everything so we can start fresh with, a brand new year's worth of stuff. Is there any preference in your guys's, opinion on when people should start? Is it something you can do like right now today, even though your books are a mess and everything's all over the place? When's the best time to get started with something like that for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would always say do it early, do it now, don't wait, because you're only delaying, you're only adding more work to the pile, right? So, and a lot of times, especially when we price things, we're looking at like how much, like how many months are we going back and what are we looking at? And to be honest, there have been a couple of times where the books have either been so messy or they're so behind, like it's such a, I'll say it, disaster, that there are times where we say, you know what, we're going to scrap these books and we're just going to start over from the beginning of the year. So it doesn't even matter the work that you maybe tried to put into it, we have to go all the way back just to get it right for you. It's going to cost you less if we just do it all the way through rather than trying to untangle and piece together and question and fix. It's going to be better for you to do it that way. So I would say if you're thinking about it, if you, and don't be embarrassed. I mean, we've seen it all, right? And so I'd rather, talk to somebody and get it straightened out, because that is a big thing. I think guys, they're very alone in their finances with their business. You can't go and talk to your employees about this struggle, right? That's a big no-no. And so I think it is really hard because you're just kind of solo. You're on an island when you're dealing with these things. So I think sometimes there is some embarrassment and that holds us back from moving forward with something we know is maybe a problem, or we just don't want to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, no, don't do that. Like contact, and also you don't know the availability. So right now we have a couple of projects that we're working on currently. So it might be like a wait list kind of thing where I tell you, hey, I'm looking at everything I'm going to need from you, but I can't get started for another 2 months. So this is perfect. Go take that time to get everything ready for me so that once we get to that point in time, you should have everything collected and we can get going. Typically, we say that we can do a year's worth of work within about 4 to 6 weeks. Big caveat, it depends on what's going on,
Right.
but that's typically our turnaround time. But that also depends on the communication back and forth, because we are going to stop at some point and ask you a bunch of questions about what we just untangled, and we're going to wait to get your response so we can go back and apply your response and continue working. We're probably going to do that a couple of times. So if we don't hear back from you we can't really move forward. And then that can push the project off later. So they're really, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, please communicate with me. I would much rather have a lot of dialogue, a lot of upfront. You tell me, even if it doesn't pertain to anything I'm doing, that's fine. I want my clients to feel like they can communicate. And I don't know if this matters or not, but anytime I talk to a business owner, I tell them that we actually don't price our clients' work based on an hourly rate. I know that some firms do that. That's popular. A lot of CPAs do that. We try to stick with a flat monthly rate, and it's for that reason. Because I know personally, if I need to talk to my lawyer or I need to talk to my CPA, I am on the clock. And it makes me not want to talk to them. I'm like, I have this question. I actually have a question for my lawyer right now about trademarking. And I'm like, I just don't want to pay to ask him a question that's going to take him 3 minutes to answer, so I don't want that to be a hindrance to our clients to withhold information or to be unsure of something and go make a move that I could have maybe helped them avoid if they had just asked me. So that's how we like to operate. We want to communicate. We want to have as much of that up front. But yeah, just dive in. Just go for it now. Don't wait. Don't delay. You're only going to be in worse shape if you wait. And you're still behind on the knowledge of where your business currently stands the further you wait. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's honestly another thing that you and I have in common, where I don't bill by an hourly rate either. Most of our services are either one-time payments or ongoing, like monthly retainers, stuff like that. And all of my clients, they get my personal cell phone number. We're in direct communication with them. When things come up, we handle it right away. And similar again to your process, there are stages where, we're going to need some input here, and we can only move forward as quickly as you guys can get back to us. So the open line communication and not feeling like there's any resistance there is super important for us too.
Yeah.
So on that note, another thing that's very similar to your business and my business is there's a lot of lingo. And some of the big ones that you've talked about so far, KPIs, COGS, stuff like that. Within the marketing world, there's a bunch of them. But what are some of the big, not buzzwords, but important lingo, important terms that people should understand? And again, KPI and COGS being the two ones that we've talked about already. But
Wow. Okay. So I will say this. I try really hard not to do that. And I didn't even think about that. So thanks for calling me on that, because I try to tell my clients, along with the communication, I try to tell them that I don't want them to ever be embarrassed or afraid to ask me a question, because again, personal experience, I really hate talking to financial advisors that are way up here. And I'm like, can you talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old? Because I don't know what you're saying right now when you use your lingo and your mumbo jumbo, right? So I try really hard not to do that. I try, especially when we're helping interpret the books, we will kind of pinpoint, like I said, COGS, and explain what's wrapped into this and what does that mean, just to kind of offer that baseline. So when we talk about cost of goods sold, we are talking about expenses that are directly related to the service or the product that you are selling. In the lawn care and landscaping industry, it's typically a service. And so we'll just see it in the books listed as cost of service instead. Same thing though. So oftentimes that is an expense like supplies and materials, or equipment rental, subcontractors. Sometimes it can also be payroll if you have employees who are, doing the work of the service that you're offering. Then you might actually be splitting out your payroll expense, because you might also have an office staff that is helping, manage the crew, or they might be doing the scheduling, or they might be handling the phones. And so they're on payroll. That would be considered an overhead expense, which is an indirect expense to the service that you're offering. So there's different things that we can see in the cost of goods sold or cost of service accounts. It just, again, depends on what the happenings are of your business and what's going on, and how we want to see it structured to better understand the KPI. The KPI stands for key performance indicator. So these are just little metrics or stats about the business that can help you understand better what is the health of the business. So it might be an asset ratio would be a KPI that you want to look at. Do you have way more assets than your business can sustain? Or it might be a debt ratio. Are you carrying way too much debt in your business? So using the financial statement as your starter to then be able to look at these formulas for these ratios and these KPIs really helps you then see the health of your business. And it all starts with the bookkeeping. If the bookkeeping and all the transactions are not in the right place, then your ratios and your KPIs, your key performance indicators, are not going to be accurate or available to you. So, gosh, I'm trying to think. That is a good question. Like, what are other buzzwords? Boy, you caught me off guard. So I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a second, but I'm glad you called out those. Because yeah, you're right. There are a lot of buzzwords that we use in the industry, and I try my best to just keep it to where everyone can understand what we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what everyone needs and appreciates, right? So having a conversation with someone that's not inadvertently belittling you for your lack of education in this thing that they have so much knowledge in and that you don't. I think my clients appreciate that. And we try and just tell them that right up front. Like, don't feel dumb, ask all the questions, lots of communication. I try to be pretty casual. Obviously, I'm not here in like a blazer and, I work from home. Like, we try and keep it really casual because then our clients feel comfortable enough to open up to us, and building that relationship with them is the most important piece of then us being successful and working together. I think it also builds a respect. And so my clients are pretty, they just know the process and they respect it. And so they are timely with getting us the information that we need. And so we've just established a good relationship that way through communication.
100%.
I'll have to get back to you on buzzwords. Boy, I'm going to think on this now.
Yeah, those are two big ones though, and it's important that those got covered. So
Yeah.
definitely for sure. There's definitely some other ones I'm positive, but
What are they in your world? What are your buzzwords? I'm sure I've heard of them.
So CPC, CPL, cost per click, cost per lead, or conversion rate, all
Yeah.
the things related to running paid advertisements. When it comes to SEO or ranking websites, there's a bunch of them there too. A lot of it has to do with like the different aspects that go into that. So H1 and H2 tags, heading tags, titles, meta descriptions, directories, citation listings, backlinks from PBNs versus blog posts and all these other things where it's like, if I start having a conversation with a landscaping business owner and we get into that realm of things, I lose them. And so it's really hard, and it took a long time for me to be able to really simplify your process in a way where anybody, regardless of their level of comprehension, can understand what you're saying. And for the landscape watching this too, it absolutely applies to your services in your world as well. There are plenty of things that you could just walk around an estimate or, a property walk with a client, and you could be saying all this stuff, industry lingo, things that other landscapers would 100% understand and know. But again, you have to meet your client on their level with their, realm of understanding and really make things simple for them. Because at the end of the day, if someone doesn't understand what they're buying, they are not going to buy it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
a good
important
point.
to define those kinds of terms. And sometimes it's, instead of using the fancy industry lingo, it's like we can just say it another way that's way simpler, but still gets the point across. So
Yeah, no, great point. Great point. And just being relatable to know that, because you lost me. I don't CVC. I haven't heard of those terms. So if you were talking to me about my business and using your services, I would have no idea. I would have so many more questions for you. And so, yeah, I think if you can upfront explain those items, or just let them know that, this is what we're talking about, but this is what we call it, but this is what we're talking about. It just eliminates that whole, not to say it's pretentious, but it can come across that way, especially if you're totally outside of the industry.
100%. And also the breaking down of the formality of things, because I run my business the same way. Like, what you see is what you get. I'm just a human being. I'm just a person. And I'm not going to put on this suit and tie, firm handshake, sit down over expensive dinner and like be super uptight and formal. With my clients, it's like, dude, I'm here to help you and help your business. And we should have a, personal relationship with the services that I offer and with the services that you offer. On some kind of level, if you want to see it that way, you can, but we're partners in your business. And so we really want to have a very open dialogue and a very like mutual relationship and something that's not super formal, super businessy, and very transactional. I try to break that down as quickly as possible to where we get on like more of a personal level with our clients. And I'm sure you probably feel the same.
Oh yeah. If a business calls me, the first thing I say to them is, hey, my coworkers are 5 and under, and I have 3 dogs on site. So it could get really wild in the background right now. And that usually kind of breaks the tension of this intimidating call that they're making.
Yeah.
And then it often like jumps into the conversation about their kids and, oh, no big deal. Like I have the same setup. And so, yeah, just being relatable. And I like what you said, like we're all humans, right? And we can treat each other like humans. And, we do set the standard up front that like we're all respectful to each other. Like we all talk nice to each other. And thankfully, I've yet to encounter any type of bad vibe, bad relationship with a client. I truly have the best clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, we love that. And we love to celebrate with them. A lot of times, we capture their birthday for a reason. We send them birthday treats on their birthday. We are a part of their team, even though we're not officially on payroll, which I think, honestly, to speak to that, I think that is a huge perk, because a lot of times for me in my industry, what we see is it's like office administrator, or somebody who's in the office and they're tending to the phones and the scheduling and all the things. And a lot of times they often get tasked with the bookkeeping. And that's just what happens because they're the person at the desk. And so if you can, and if you are in a position where you're thinking, okay, do I need to hire an office person? I have started running into business owners who are telling me like, I'd rather not if I don't have to. And I think part of that, I think it's a great decision because, we do the work that we need to do and then we get it done and we're done with it. You don't have to, not to say babysit, but you don't have to keep me busy with other tasks. You're paying for the service that's right here in front of us to get done. We're trying to be as efficient as possible to do the work that we need to do. And so I think that that's a huge benefit too, to kind of working virtually or having people that, you don't have to have on site necessarily. Times have changed, right? Like, so while it's nice to have those inner office or, face to face, obviously you're going to have your team and your guys who are in the field and they're working, but you can have just as good an experience with somebody who is virtual. And honestly, I think it makes us work harder to establish those relationships because of our distance. And so I have gotten to know our clients really well and we stay in touch, and we're Facebook friends. Some of us are Facebook friends. And so it just makes it feel like, hey, we're all humans, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just on what you just said, from kind of like a order of operations, point of view as well. Within your landscaping business, you're probably going to need a bookkeeper before you need like a full-time administrative assistant. And some of the roles that person would be playing would obviously encompass the bookkeeping and maybe some of the estimating and stuff like that. But the biggest, most valuable, pieces of that outside of the bookkeeping portion is going to be probably them answering the phone or scheduling for you, or handling customer complaints, or work orders, stuff like that. So again, you're gonna hit that threshold where it's very necessary to have a bookkeeper before some of those other tasks. Because as the business owner in the earlier stages, you're gonna very much want to be in tune with the customer relations, sending out the estimates and doing the scheduling, because it probably is all going to fall on you to do those things anyway. So again, the benefit of having a bookkeeper that's remote is normally if you wanted someone to handle that for you, you'd have to then also provide the office space for them or somewhere for them to go. And a lot of times it's like, you want to talk about landscaping being expensive, and some of the overhead and rent, especially for commercial spaces, is not cheap either. And really in the first couple years of running your landscaping business, if you can operate out of your home, your garage, a shop, or like even just a storage unit somewhere, and not have to put up extra money for more space for that administrative role, that's going to save you a ton of time, effort, money, and all of the above as well. So definitely a good option is having that person handle those things remotely. So it's a big it's a huge benefit, honestly.
Yeah. And I actually have a couple of clients who obviously they've hired us, but they've also hired almost that assistant or office manager, and they're remote. So they can take the calls remote, and they can do the AR and AP remote. They're doing the billing for the business owner. It takes some coordinated effort from the business owner to make the communication happen. But again, it offers flexibility to that employee, and it also alleviates you from not saying babysitting, but sometimes when there's dead time, you've got to keep a person busy. And on top of that, so now you don't have to pay payroll tax on this contractor that you've just hired, who is, again, not sitting in a facility that's costing you money. So there are a lot of cost savings sometimes when you can think outside of the box. And I will say it does take trust. You really do need to find people that you can trust, and you can see the results of, are they getting the work done? Because yeah, you are offsite with them. And so it can be a scary situation. So having some references or something to pull from in that sense is good, but it can be done, and it can be done efficiently and very effectively for both them and for you. It's the cost savings. It's kind of funny to think about how great the setup is for so many people. I mean, thank goodness for technology to kind of open the doors for this. And, we started our business in 2019. So it was like kind of really right before everything exploded for virtual work. So it was acceptable, but it was still kind of weird. So when I would talk to people on the phone, I would let them know, hey, I work from home. I got the crew in the background, like just heads up. And everyone was like, okay, that's fine. And nowadays it's just so acceptable. And I really rarely have any pushback from that. And I've had one business who they're our client now, but they were a little hesitant in the beginning. They're like, I don't know, like I usually just go to my CPA's office and I can sit down and talk to him, and you're several states away from me. I just don't know how I trust all of this. And so, we talk through all the safety measures we're taking on our end because, we're handling financial information. It has to be very secure in how we're sharing the information. And that is also a little bit of that responsibility is on the business owner. We try and tell everyone, please don't email me anything sensitive. That's like the number one way anything can be hacked. We use secure portals that have like military level and bank level encryption. So that is how we can easily and safely share documents and resources. But I often say, my CPA, who's been my CPA for the last 6 or 7 years, he's probably 30 minutes away from my home. And not once have I ever gone into his office. We do everything online. You just don't have to nowadays. And so sometimes it is nice to sit down and be face to face. But honestly, to me, the benefit of eliminating the time that goes into that is a bigger plus for me. And for those who want the FaceTime, there's this option as well. We can do Zoom, or we can chat through video and make it personal that way too.
Absolutely. And honestly, most of the time it can be done, quicker, easier, and scheduling wise, it's a lot simpler. You don't have to make a time to go into somebody's office. They can pick up the phone or do a Zoom call or FaceTime like this. And, there really isn't a lot that you're sacrificing by not having a physical place to go to. Obviously, there's some security that comes with that. But another thing that I kind of like to think about as well is when you work and you hire people remotely, you can get the top talent in the world. There might not be a landscape exclusive bookkeeper in your town, in your city, state, and anywhere near close to you. So that's something that there's a trade-off there, right? Like, yes, it is easy. You can drive to their office and physically make contact with this person, and if there's ever an issue, like things can be handled that way. But also virtually, you're able to attract talent from around the world. And I work with a lot of people that are overseas in different time zones that are amazing at what they do that would never have been possible if everything was based, where I am, in Florida in the United States. There's just not enough people in the vicinity that do what we do as specifically as some of the tasks that we need done. And obviously there's just so many benefits to being able to work virtually where we can attract a really talented team that just wouldn't be possible in person. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that we have started doing that we really like and that our clients really like is that we, to those who are interested, not everyone is interested in this, but we often make a 5-minute overview video of your financials as a recap and send it to our clients. And it I mean, if you don't have to attend a meeting and you can save that time, you're going to do that. You're going to make that choice, right? And so our clients have really liked that they're getting the information. It's a high level, it's quick, but we're covering the information that we would normally cover in a sit down meeting. And it's not to say that I don't like the pleasantries or, but the pleasantries alone can be that 5-minute time span that it takes us to make this video, right? So you're busy, you're out in the field, you don't have a lot of time. Carving out time to sit down, get in front of a computer and do a Zoom call and meet with me, that's really hard in this industry. So we get a lot of appreciation for, hey, I got your video. I got some time this evening. It's 5 minutes. I watched it. Perfect. Like, so little things like that we can do that make life easier. And of course, we tell everyone, hey, if you have questions and we need to talk or we need a meeting, like definitely let's do that and figure it out. But if we can help eliminate these time sucks where it's not necessary, but you can get the information that you need, like we're all about that.
Absolutely. And now that you say it like this, like we do the same thing. We do, like a Loom video where we'll screen record and do progress reports and, monthly reporting on whatever services we're doing. Also, if there's like specific things, excuse me, that a client requested, when that task gets taken care of, I'll just shoot them a text. Hey man, this got banged out. We're good. Check this out. And when you have a second, get back to me. Let me know everything is up to snuff and we're good to go. So there's actually more communication that happens virtually than if it was, I'm at my office, come see me during these hours during the, business week. So
Yeah.
it's way quicker, way faster, saves more time, and there's more communication about especially important things that are time sensitive, where, we can get a lot more done over the internet than in person, which is really cool. So
Yeah, I agree. I'm cool with text. I tell people I prefer text because it's just such an easy form of communication. And if I can't look at it right this minute, that's okay. I usually respond back right away, like, hey, I'm at the grocery store right now because my work is very flexible, when my hours of operation are flexible, because typically our deadlines are so spread out. Our deadlines are month-long deadlines that we're turning things over. So our workload and the times that we work, they are very flexible. And that's the reason why we have a remote business, is to offer that flexibility to me and then my team as well. But that's not to say that I'm not doing stuff all the time, right? So I try to respond back and let them know, hey, by this afternoon, I can look at this for you. Or even an email, I try to tell everyone, we want to give you at least a business day to acknowledge and respond to you, because I kind of hate that. If I've contacted someone and I don't hear back, it's like, did you get the email? Do you know what happened? Did it fall through the cracks? So if we can at least communicate and say, hey, got it, we're on it, we'll look into it. But text is so easy. And then you've got your banter, and that's always fun and everything too.
yeah.
But it's just so much, again, it kind of goes with that, like we're pretty casual. It doesn't have to be a formal email all the time. Sometimes it needs to be for keeping track of things, but texts are so easy.
100%. One last thing I wanted to touch on was on the remote side of things, there are so many different roles that can be filled remotely, whether it be bookkeeping, marketing. There are call centers, people that can do scheduling and estimating for you. There are so many tools out there. And honestly, technology has completely blown open the doors, for a lot of really unique solutions to problems that business owners of all industries face. And yes, it does take some trust. Yes, it does take, some experimentation and seeing how these things fit into your business. The biggest thing that I always look for when either working with someone or hiring them virtually is I trust but verify. You know what I mean? I give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to make sure that this person is who they say they are, is capable of doing the work they say they can do, and preferably has results and has done it for other people that are in my similar situation. And if you can find things where, all those boxes are checked and this person, is a good fit for you and your business and your system, then why not give it a shot? Because again, it can save you so much time, money, and, honestly, it's a little bit easier to manage all of it once it's set up. The biggest hurdle is being comfortable with the software, being comfortable with the virtual communication, and kind of having this piece of your business that's intangible. It exists in the cloud, it's on the internet, and it's not necessarily like a physical thing. But if you can, get accustomed to that and find ways to implement that into your business that works for you, then it's definitely an option to consider for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know the whole cloud thing is because I do work with a couple of business owners where they're pretty old school and just simple things like time tracking for their guys. Like they're still using paper to record time, or they're still writing on paper for invoices. And it's like, no, no, stop that. Stop that right now. Like I don't, it's hard because it's not bookkeeping related, right? But that's an area where we can step in and give advice and say, okay, here's the system you need to be using. You need to check out the software. You need to look into this because these automations, these things that are out there that, it is different from working with your hands out in the field, doing the physical work. But on the back end, the business, the things, the automations that you can set up nowadays that alleviate so much time. We currently have a client right now who was going from all the paper invoicing. I mean, the paper was like changing hands 3 different times before it would land on the business owner's desk. He's at night entering all the invoices. He's like 4 months behind on getting paid for his jobs. And I'm like, no, stop it. We got to figure out a system right now. And so we got him introduced. We did a lot of hand holding and it was a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot. But I
Yeah.
was willing, I was like, we gotta help you out. So I was willing and we worked together to figure out a plan on how this was gonna work within the rules that we typically offer in our services. But we introduced him to some different softwares. There was a payroll service that he was using that was not integrating into QuickBooks. And so just that one automation alone was causing us to take a lot of extra steps to make sure payroll was entered correctly. So now we've got something that is in a sense automated, but really to get him working with like a software platform that's gonna all be in his phone for invoicing. I mean, just the time saving in doing that. So I know sometimes it's really scary, and especially for him, it was like, no, I've always done it this way and I don't need to change.
Yeah.
But he was feeling so run down, like he was ready to be done. And just introducing him to some of those things that was out there. And I get it, it was hard. I had to really hold his hand to get him there. But now he's like, I cannot believe I wasn't doing this before because I can already feel the relief. He was like 1 week into this new system that we helped him set up, and he's feeling the relief, which is great. Like that's totally outside of bookkeeping. I mean, it's related because now these invoices are going to flow into the books. He's not entering them. I don't have to worry about him making mistakes with them or getting way behind with them now. He's getting paid faster. He's doing like ACH payments now, whereas before he's waiting on check or cash.
Mm.
so, so like, I know that those are they're pretty common and they're pretty easy to set up. But if that's not how you originally started, like it can be really hard to kind of step out of the way and trust technology and the cloud to have these things kind of work together for your benefit. Now I'll say there's some technology that I'm like, no, thanks. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to trust that. We're
Yeah.
talking a little scary times there, but there are certain things that are available that are very beneficial, especially when you're operating a business. Very beneficial to you. Time savers, that's the key.
Yes, 100%. And as a business owner, I totally understand. And I think we can like wrap everything we just set up in a nice little bow tie by saying change is hard, but the way you're doing things right now is pretty hard too. So it's a matter of
Yeah.
like, okay, are you gonna iterate, adapt, and bring technology or services or software or other things into your business to make life easier? Or are you going to continue to do things the hard way? And a lot of times when you continue to do things the hard way, you get left in the dust by the people that are willing to take on these new softwares, new tools, programs, or people to help them. Or you just end up, like you said, this situation this guy was in, where you're so frustrated and bogged down by this, you just don't even want to deal with it anymore. So why lose your whole business, which took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make, and not have it be fun, not have it be as simplified and streamlined as it possibly can be. And there's a lot of softwares, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of people out there that can help you with those things. You just have to not be so hard-headed, not so stuck in your ways. And it is tough when I've been running this business for 30, 40 years, doing it the same way. And there's a lot of guys, especially in the trades, this is not just a landscaping exclusive thing. And I've talked to them before too. And like you said, having some patience, having, that period of time where you're like, dude, it's going to be okay. I will hold your hand through this whole process, because you have to understand too, like we're taking a system and implementing it that's completely changing the way they run their business. And that's uncomfortable for anybody. So I have a lot of respect for them when they're willing to at least take the chance and, hear what I have to say and, be open-minded to some of these solutions that we offer. And yes, anything that's new, any change is going to be scary and uncomfortable at first. But like you said, give it 2 weeks to a month where you start to see how things operate differently. And you're like, all right, why did I not do this sooner? And that's pretty much the only statement that's left after it's all said and done. But
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great way to wrap everything up, I think. And I think for my part, at least, if you don't have a bookkeeper currently, I really encourage you to consider it, look into it. A shameless plug for our business, of course, but even still, just finding someone that you can trust, whether they are virtual or local, it's so important for your business, just in the tiniest way that, like I said, it's the first step is just really managing the accounting software and those transactions, but really all the things that it's related to and you can build upon and you can learn about your business through that. I really encourage that. And then additionally, finding someone that can hold you accountable and kind of offer some advisory along with that. Sometimes that tough love is needed. Sometimes that hand holding is needed. And sometimes just having someone to help interpret what's going on, it's so beneficial. So I hope just hearing us kind of chat and talk about these things, I hope that at least somebody took something helpful away, whether they have a bookkeeper currently and they love their bookkeeper. Maybe we talked about something that they're like, oh, wow, I should stop doing that. I should stop paying my guys cash bonuses.
Yeah.
If anyone got a tip, I hope that's the one.
100%. And yeah, we covered an absolute ton, a lot of good nuggets in there. And yeah, I think we'll wrap things up. I'm out of questions, and we've been on here for a while, and we've provided a lot of value, I'm sure. So go ahead, tell people where they can find you, and I'll make sure that in the description or in the comments of whatever places this video ends up at, you can find your website, social medias, and stuff like that. But if you want to tell people where they can find you now, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're at bookkeepersforlandscapers.com. And if you go there, check out our site, check out our services we offer. You can actually schedule a free consultation call with us. Check out our scheduling block there. And then we're on Instagram too, Bookkeepers for Landscapers. You can follow us there. We are always dropping in little nuggets of wisdom and little tidbits about bookkeeping and how it can save you in your business. So that's where you can find us.
Yeah, absolutely. I checked out your Instagram too. You make some really good content. So guys, follow me over on Instagram. You will regret it. Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon. I really appreciate it. That was awesome. And yeah, I look forward to maybe doing it again soon sometime.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right. Right on. Bye.